you have been with us for most of the day, but for anyone who may have just joined us for this last presentation, my name is Sarah Ripp, and I'm the Assistant Director for the Latin American, Caribbean, and Iberian Studies program here at UW-Madison. And this afternoon, I'm thrilled to introduce you to our final speaker of the day, Fred Carter. Fred is the co-founder and executive director of Black Oats Center, a nonprofit organization with the mission to equip youth and families with sustainable skills, turning them into beacons of resilience for the future. Affectionately known as Baba Fred or the Ancient One, Fred Carter adds depth and brevity to the possibility of equity and justice. As a former Black Panther member, he brings over 60 years of strategy and process to the leadership circles he shares with those who are young enough to be children or grandchildren, to be of children or grandchildren status. This includes National Black Food Justice Alliance and Black Land and Power. This retired transportation executive left the corporate world to found Black Oak Center with his wife, Dr. Wright Carter, and his son, Aiken Carter, in 2006, when it was clear that the adverse consequences of climate instability, resource constraints, and a growing global population would shape an arduous course of life on our planet for years to come. Fred is a permaculture teacher and a regenerative farmer who has been critical in the development of peri-urban local food system development in and around Chicago. Please join me in welcoming Fred to the workshop. Thank you so much for being with us today, Fred.
Thank you for the possibility of sharing. Yes. Yeah. The topic is so extraordinary to me because it allowed me to be in the space I am right now. And the concerns about future, especially amongst young people specifically. My son was the actual driver for us doing the work that we're doing because he was concerned about his future and what he did. He came up to me and his mother said, "You messed up my future." He was 8 years old and he asked me, "What the heck are you going to do about it?" And at that time I was at General Motors, so all I knew was just diminishing the value of nature as a practice of business. And it started us on this journey. So the young people is the driver for me. And the future possibility of the life that they live is a critical thing that I've, continuously try to enlighten myself about options and ways of being and thinking about the complexity, or you might say meta complexity of the world that we live in right now. It's really challenging. Nonlinear complexity, right? Not complicated. The assembly line is complicated, but it's not complex. But the problems of climate actually should start with us. And the production line and the technology around production and industrial development is really the second effect. But the first effect is us. And to support generations in my rear, to understand the power of the presence and also the power of the designer within themselves. I think the design within yourself is the first pathway to resolving complex problems. So we started with energy. Energy is the foundation of all life that we know right now. I mean, it took energy for me to get here and be in communication. It took a lot of fossil fuel to create the technology that we're sharing our ideas and insights on and through. But it's something that you might say, as someone once said, we're energy blind. So we started in energy, and it was peak oil conversation during the time in which we got involved in 2003. So in the space of resource depletion and peak oil, we never thought anything about energy at all. I didn't think energy had anything to do with anything. Actually, the Twin Tower incident was an outcome of a challenge around our government and energy. So in 2004, we was in Yellow Springs, Ohio, at the Antioch College in the first North American Community Peak Hour Conference. And in that space, I learned things that were so disturbing, but in a great way. The reason it was disturbing because I too did wanted. I also was comfortable in my blindness, and the blindness of not being conscious of how powerful I am as a human being, and that I can be cause in a matter of what happens in the environment. Didn't want to get there. I would be honest. I just wanted to be comfortable and successful, like what most of us try to achieve. And what came with that comfort and success was a deafening blindness about the unintended outcomes of my behavior in achieving those goals. And so my son, which is the future, he's 27 now, he forced us to rethink my relationship. And rethinking the relationship are one of the beginning steps, I think, in addressing the climate crisis. Because the challenge from the way I sit is relationship. Not only relationship with the trees, nature, and all those things, but relationship with human beings. So we're like the beginning breakdown of climate change. And since the breakdown began in our relationship to plants, but also in our relationship with ourselves within ourselves. What was it in me? I started asking, what was it in me that had the desire that emerged to create certain forms of technology? And also creating those technology without the consideration of not harming anything. We used to always have this conversation between myself and my wife. Is this a sustainable conversation to be in? So having the frame of thinking in terms of sustainability, for me, was a beginning portal that I never thought I would ever go through. I mean, I can understand why people don't want to go through that portal. We said we fell in the rabbit hole early, but we assumed that everybody was going to have to come down here with us at some point in time. And what we started doing, learning from energy, we learned about energy, sustainable energy. Of course, we got all the green and hybrid vehicles, conservation, energy classes. We did all those things that you're supposed to do, right? Solar panels. I learned how to do my own biodiesel. We used to make biodiesel in my house at Beverly when I lived in Chicago in the garage as a response to climate disruption and also the carbon footprint. But the thing that I learned along the way, surprisingly, that the more efficient I became, the more energy I use. So I started with carbon-based, non-carbon. There's no such thing as a non-based carbon energy. All energies are carbon-based. And if you burn carbons to get the energy, either doing it physically within your own body, or it's done in the environment. So I was doing all the right green things. I had a hybrid solar vehicle. We had a community group in Beverly, actually, that went from everybody home. We did our insulation. We were doing insulation, energy efficiency. That's the energy efficiency issue, right? So we was insulating everybody home. We've had these installation parties. Right. I mean, this is great. I mean, it's the building resilient community, climate optimism. I mean, it's the conversation that I can only be in every single day. How to be more resilient. But the part of resiliency that we discovered, see, we have 4 educational tracks at Black Oaks. Sustainable energy is one track. Regenerative agriculture is the other one. Natural building. But the crown is resiliency. And we hold resiliency more than just having energy efficiency, reducing the carbon footprint, but the inner observer, we believe, is the beginning of untangling the complexity of the problem that we created. that the inner person created. So learning about your inner designer, we feel, is the most important thing right now in our history. So the inner designer, which is who I am within myself, formulating my own beliefs, systems, creating thoughts, which I manifest in the physical world. And without understanding that process within myself, I may be unconsciously repeating the past, right? So the resiliency and optimism for me comes out of this conversation of learning myself. And the more that I learn about myself, it allows me to identify things that have true value. You know, we used to be at General Motors. I could never figure out how was it. It had to be a brilliant, evil person that convinced me that one shape of metal and plastic and rubber put me in a social status that was better than the person that had a different shape of plastic and metal. And actually, I paid more for that plastic and metal. And I too thought I was better and had arrived and successful. That was a real extraordinary person that created that form of thinking and being, and they monetized it. So the monetizing of that, and also the lack of understanding about I'm not separate. I'm not separate from the person that's in the other shape of vehicle. I'm not better than the person in the other vehicle because I got a different shape. These are thoughts and value systems that we did not create at our birth. So our first breath didn't have anything to do with that. Where all that conditioning came from is our social educational system. And the disturbing thing about energy consciousness, it sort of disrupts that consciousness of on what we call it, on the unknown. There's so much we don't know. You never realize the impact of energy on our thinking, our thoughts, our everything that we do. So we call it Black Oak Center for Sustainable Renewable Living for a Post-Carbon World. In that post-carbon world, we feel that we're in the post-carbon world because of what you see in this slide around energy and energy peaking. And the different options and directions that we tend to think that we can solve the problem through. But the one that we chose, what you call creative descent, earth stewardship. And this is a design that David Helgren, who's one of the co-founders of permaculture. This was a design that was so enlightening for me because I'm a tacky person. I'm into science, technology, and all that. I thought the technology was going to solve my problem. Beam me up, Scotty. You know, Star Wars energy, black matter, black energy, all this different technologies and science fiction imagining of energy. But I never realized that all this technology and capability come from some carbon-based system. And so we started on a green technology journey initially. We thought green technology was going to save the day. I had a green vehicle. I was doing solar design and installation. We live off grid. We created our own solar array system, put it in, install it. We give classes here. But the reality of energy and my blindness, even though I was in the green technology field, it takes a lot of green to produce the vehicles that we were driving in as a green vehicle. It was a hybrid vehicle. And it took 20 barrels of oil to create that vehicle. I mean, how blind can you be? I'm saying, let's get rid of oil. But I didn't realize how getting rid of oil would impact everything that I do. So that was not, later we discovered that was not possibly the way to go. Although now there's a big movement for the Green Deal, the whole thing about transitioning to a green economy, but we forget the carbon footprint of the fossil fuel industry. It's going to take a lot of mining. It's going to take a lot of extracting of minerals from the planet. And those activities was the beginning of the problem. So even though we're talking about green and sustainability, we're only talking about the acceleration of extracting of natural materials from the earth to create these technologies that we call green technology. So the disturbing part for me was that the awareness of this, because I, for one, was definitely committed to this is going to solve the problem. But what we discovered that the creative descent, reconnecting to nature, reconnecting to my inner self, understanding true values, perennial values, you might call it. There are perennial values that would help us address the complexity that we created because of our unconnectedness to nature. Our perennial values, our perennial thoughts emerge from an ancient stream of history. And that ancient stream of history is what we need to go back and fetch. Our indigenous consciousness is the consciousness that will allow us to mitigate and also make the transition, not so much maybe a green transition, but a more earth-centered transition, a more centered transition around loving each other. How could I consider, I'm riding in a green vehicle, I got solar panels on my house, but I hate my neighbor. I mean, that was another thing that was kind of disturbing. I'm green, but I'm racist. I'm a racist. I'm green, but I'm segregating myself from women, men, and other races and culture. I'm green, and I think I'm better than anybody that's not so green. So I've got that perhaps we're looking in the wrong direction. Instead of pointing the finger out to the technology and the industries, we need to look at the thumb that's pointed back at us, right? We need to go a lot more deeper into who we are within ourselves, so it will allow us to be more driven, not by our fear and pain, but more driven by love and compassion. If you're driven by love and compassion as a designer, you will create the technology that reflects your internal values. And we wouldn't have to worry about our footprint, because the first footprint would come from the space of love and compassion. That means do no harm. How do you design without doing harm? How do you have relationships with each other without doing harm? This is the journey that I'm in more than ever. And this is the reason I think I've gotten so attached to young people, because the world that they're emerging into, you have to be more resilient, not technically smart. You have to be more resilient because there are elements that are emerging that our technology might not stop. There are elements that are emerging to the transition of our internal value system that are unwinding because they was based on fossil fuel extraction, what we call here the carbon-based mind, the extractive mind. So what do? How do we live in a world with the presence of constrained resources without fighting or decimating each other? We have a lot of challenges before us. We may be in a war before the year is out because of resources. And it's important to me in my relationship to whoever I'm in the range of that we learn a new portal, go through a different portal of interacting with each other. Because some of the things we're not going to stop. But the thing we can stop in the presence we can be present to each other and learn how to be with each other in ways that creates a more sustainable future. I guess when I think about it, it's not how clever you can be in learning all the technologies and all. That don't mean anything if you can't love people. If I cannot have a powerful interaction with you, what happens in that space, we create a karmic impact. Pain normally creates more pain. If I view you as separate from myself, that's exactly what I'm going to create in my environment. And now the problem that we're confronted with, or the mega problem that we're confronted with, or as what's my guy name? Ken talks about, the mega problem is way beyond our capacity of being separate. It's something we have to be with each other. We have to learn how to move past the barriers of our past condition of pain. And this for us is the most important thing right now. Yes, you can come here. We got classes in green technology, energy, food, regenerative. Like today, I apologize for being late. We're in a program with the state of Illinois. It's called the Illinois Eats. And today was our first distribution of food into Chicago, Cook County. We wanted what they call a lead agency. We've been waiting for this, by the way, for at least 15 years. I remember, I'm old enough to remember when there was a local food system here in the state of Illinois. And for the state of Illinois to acknowledge the value of that and the young people engaged in it is an extraordinary phenomenon. So we can definitely be engaged in the present. And we can begin in the present to learn how to separate ourselves from the past. You can only do that in the present. You can't do it in the future. So these are some of the things that we're trying to practice more here at Black Oaks, how to be more in the present. And it's actually it's a strange conversation to be in because most of us as humans are being driven by the past. And what we're starting to discover here, we got about 20 young people employed now, and we're supporting them with skills of being resilient. How do you be resilient in the face of poverty? How do you be resilient? I know what it is to go from 100 to 0 in 30 days. And how do you manage yourself in the face of economic collapse and calamity? These are most significant practices and tools. Only in the present can we begin to change the future. But if I can learn how to be in the present and distinguish those drivers that I've been unconscious about, I can have a new relationship. In fact, I can have a new relationship and I can recreate the present from moment to moment. This is something I've learned in the training at Landmark, how to recreate yourself. Just recreate yourself from moment to moment. Those are resiliency skills. We got to be able to help our younger generation to learn how to recreate their story every single moment and have an interpretation of that story that keeps them empowered and inspired to face the consequences of past unintendedly unfolding. So, yes, the presence is the answer to the climate change. Not future technologies, not the past. Our presence is the space and power that we have to shift any paradigm. Not an imaginative paradigm in the future. Not one, oh, linearly, I'm going to be at a certain place by a certain time. And besides, it's not working. We've been having conferences about energy, climate change, inequality, social justice, and all the rest of the stuff for as long as my 73 years. But it's only in the presence that there's an opportunity for me to actually be with you. What would it be like if we can be with each other in a way not based on our past? what it's like to be in relationship with the person next to you, not driven by some thought form based on what they did 5 or 10 years ago. These are the things that I feel are most important because when things don't work, all you got is the moment. And if we can learn more skillfully how to be in that moment, you can manage the next moment, right? And if it's not being driven by that unconsciousness of my pain, so we can transform ourselves. So climate and the possibility of shifting the climate will begin in the presence. And the more we practice this in planting, I mean, we try to do it when we plant seeds. We teach the children, how do you be in the presence as you're putting that seed in? You know, how do you be in the presence of nature? It brings a whole new paradigm that we don't have enough time to right now to really go into that. But these are the tools that I say that address what you see on the screen. It's not technology going to resolve our levels of consumption. It's our internal technology that would help us resolve our levels of consumption. Because every time we improve the efficiency of anything, we tend to consume more. We are burning more fossil fuels than we ever had, even though we've had 40 years of climate change discussions, marching, protesting. Nothing has changed. So for me, that's perfect. It's perfect because what that does, it allows me to be in the presence of the reality. And where does transformation take place? In the present. So even though we talk the green talk, we live in it ourselves, but we also understand that without learning about the internal designer, I will probably keep replicating my past. And that's where we need the disruptions. We need to disrupt the past by being fully conscious in the present. Any questions?
So your passion and the fact that you said it's all you think about, that was why I was so captivated by you when you presented at the workshop at Loyola. I thought, oh my God, I have to invite him to participate in this
Yeah.
workshop. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity of sharing.
So we do have some time for some questions if folks want to pop anything in the chat. I actually do have a question to get started. I wondered if you could tell us a bit more about the food delivery project or the program that you referenced just a bit ago. I know you said it's
Yeah.
been a long time coming. It sounds like a decade. So I'd love to hear a little bit
Oh,
more
yeah.
about that.
The fact that my wife is a medical doctor. I came out of a world of supply chain management and distribution, just-in-time food, just-in-time system with GM. What we did, we combined the two, health and distribution. So understanding the relationship with the climate, resource depletion, and all that, we knew that our supply chain was going to be disrupted, right? It's just like in General Motors, we have to track a component all the way to the source. And because of our not unconsciousness of supply chain complexity, we knew that there was going to be a time where we have problems eating. So we designed a healthy food hub. The healthy food hub, I like that too. It's a 12, we call it a wealth wheel. There's a wealth wheel and there are 12 elements in that circle of how to regenerate the community. And taking every element in that community and create a reinterpretation of wealth. So the reinterpretation of wealth, specifically from the community that I grew up in, we had to redefine what was in the community. And we used the Healthy Food Hub to generate a local food system or reverse engineer one, because food is the cornerstone of everything. If you can't eat, you can't have a revolution. You won't change. Disruption in the plate is a true disruption. And so who controls that plate? This is what we thought, that through food, through the portal of food, we can regenerate our community. We could also reduce the violence and crime by having healthy children. We can also reduce the loss of wealth by capturing those elements and streams in the community where the community itself can manage its own well-being. And we centered most of this around the Healthy Food Hub. So in 2011, we started the Trinity United Church of Christ Farmers Market. And out of that farmers market, we created the Healthy Food Hub. And so the Healthy Food Hub is really, I like to share that because I think the holistic way of looking at the power of the plate, the power of our plate can resolve all the problems that we're on this Zoom call to deal with. And we think that food is sitting right in the center of that. So our food is the most common integrating fiber that we all share, regardless of the distinction of our complexion, our shapes, our history, our past. So the Healthy Food Hub was this model that we created to address that problem for the community. And amazingly, it's a lot of things occur in that space. We've had as many as 2,000 people on the weekend with babies running. I like to share that. Kids running around in safe spaces. So food can be this safe space that we can create. And the project with the state of Illinois is opening up the possibility of people looking how food can really bring people together, integrate our communities. One thing that we all love to do, I know if you could see below my neck, you would know food is something we all like. We all love eating. And breaking bread with each other seemed to be, it opens up possibility of being related. So yeah, the Healthy Food Hub was like this catalyst of redesigning the impact that food can have locally on every element in our life, from energy, material consumption. It's a circular design, the reinterpretation of wealth in the community, because in my community specifically, we were told that we had nothing, right? You don't have anything, so somebody got to bring it in. Oh, well, there's nothing there, but it's a lot of extracting out. So we have a wrong interpretation. So we have to recreate our observation skills, right? And we were using this vehicle as a way of doing that for people around us. We couldn't quite come out and say you're not looking at it correctly. Oh, no, you're not a victim, because you didn't notice that you had all that energy sitting over there in the corner. You call it waste. And you have all this abundance. You say you have no money in your pocket. We was recycling oil. We made soap. I mean, you got a whole industry around what they call waste in the community. So it's not that the communities are poor. We are poor in our perception of what is real. So this is what the Healthy Food Hub allow us to do. And it was tied to food. We also created what we call a time banking. Now there's been a lot of different interpretations of that, but actually we looked at time banking, or as my friend Cheryl Honey, she's dead now. She started a program back in 2006 and 5 with communities that didn't have monies. They would reevaluate what their true assets are. Some people had time, some people had skills. We are so wealthy. We are so wealthy as human beings. We've been told that we're not. So being told that we're not, we tend to act like we're in poverty and powerlessness. We got a lot of power. We have so much power. It's blinding. I mean, we're blinding with power. Maybe that's what the power bees are afraid of. We are so blinding with power They don't want us to know how powerful we are. They want us to stay separate,
Yeah.
stay naive. You have no power. We have the power. We're the one that's going to determine the election and all that kind of stuff. We are powerful beings here on this Zoom. And
Fred, I
there's
love
so much
that.
wealth around us. So that's the Healthy Food Hub.
Yeah, no,
Even during the Healthy Food Hub, we would shake a little bell and say, community well, community well. We would always holler community well because community well is the where we're going to solve the problems.
well, Fred, I want to share with you, I'm not sure if you can see the chat, but there's some really lovely comments for you and another question. I'm going to share this comment. Jerry says, "This is mind-blowing, and I'm so grateful for this presentation. I've been studying with a teacher, Ming Tong Gu, who speaks and teaches about coming home to ourselves and seeing our profound interconnectedness. I hear and relate to what you are saying and see my role as a teacher, passing on a way to be embodied and connected to others." Andrea said that's a beautiful thought on collective power. So I think we are all feeling that message that you're sharing of the interconnectedness.
Yes.
And I love the idea of um, what you shared there about how, there's this idea that you can feel impoverished because people maybe tell you that you are, but that you have your own agency inside and power to do more than maybe people tell you can do. And that's such a lovely thing too. I think that educators can impart with their students. So yeah, I just thought I'd share those. I don't know if you
Yeah.
have any reflection on or response to those comments.
Yeah, I can't see it, but I want to share something with you. This is not an abstract conversation. We can physically demonstrate the conversation in physics.
Hmm.
If my internal interpretation, my wife say you kind of Pollyanna, but Pollyanna is a very powerful space to be in. I can reinterpret my past, even though there was an interpretation of poverty. I grew up in the streets. Emmett Till was my first cousin, and when he got murdered, my family migrated from Mississippi to Chicago.
Oh my Lord.
So it was a lot of
Wow.
pain-driven response.
Yeah.
But the power that we have to create a story about ourselves that other people created another story. Like there's no agreement uh, for us to be in this conversation in the world. This is a conversation where the structure is not in agreement with us to be in. Because it's a conversation of power. So the story that we create, and you got to be able to do this with your children. You know, if you're doing it with an easy way of doing it, you can sneak it in. We sneak it in through the plants. So the plants is a great portal of sneaking this conversation in. Because it's something about nature itself, it takes us beyond the world of conceptual thinking. If I can practice this with a tree, of being present to a tree without interpreting that tree as being good, bad, wrong, or whatever, ugly, or whatever, I can be fully present to something that's living. It's easy to do it with the plants, but man, when you do it with another human being, it's extraordinary, extraordinary, absolutely, just, just beautiful. Being able to see another human being without all that stuff. And these are the skills that we need to be able to share and teach our children another way of seeing. Because seeing that way creates a tremendous possibility that I am empowered. I can change my perception. I can reinterpret the perception of climate change. And we might need to do that because the perception that we were given is one that human beings are worthless, right? That the thing that we did not make with our hands, which is ourself and the planet too, especially like us as human beings. And some people are less valued than others. And there the problem is too many of those kind of people and not enough for the other ones. These are interpretations and stories that we can change. We can change this overnight. You can change it in the present. And in changing it, it allows us to change that story, that we are the problem. And if we recognize that we're not the problem, like the center of the problem, we can take this same way of seeing and being can change the design of the technology that we created from moment to moment. See, the inner designer, we got to be able to show our children that we create the culture in the physical environment to help amplify the conversation that we're attempting to have now. Because this is a conversation that's hard to contain in a word. That's why it's important that we be in the presence of nature. You cannot contain this in a conversation, but you can be present of the conversation in nature. And that's one of the things I like to invite everybody here. You can always come here and practice with us. And help create more crazy people like me and all of us where we can begin to practice being with each other, because we're moving into a space. It's happening so fast we can't see it. All we do is feel something.
Mm-hmm.
But the more we can begin to create a powerful community of relationships, we can help by generating a magnetic field, electromagnetic field, a zone of healing, as they call it in permaculture, the zone. We create zones of healing. There are some things we're not going to be able to stop, but we can create these micro zones, no matter how big or small they are, like we're doing on a Zoom call right now. We're creating a micro zone in our conversation with each other. And the more we have opportunities to do this, our children will have a much brighter future, because they will be exposed to perennial principles that are old as time. Ain't nothing new about what we're talking about. But we had a disruption between our elders and ourselves. And that disruption was not just, Black people said we were disrupted from the elders, but everybody, all of us was disrupted from our indigenous wisdoms past. Our perennial past had nothing to do with what color we was. We had a past that we were so profoundly connected. We didn't have to use the term integration, because we never knew we weren't unintegrated. We were not unintegrated. So accessing that, I think, for me, I think it's a powerful tool to deal with climate change. If we were in that space as designers, we will look at our design from a whole new paradigm. And that's something I think we need to spend more time in. It's like you invest, everybody trying to save money, a percentage of your investments. But the investment of a profoundly healthy, integrated, unseparate existence, I think it should take 5% of our time, or 2%, 3%. I think it would be a great investment.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much. I know you haven't met me yet, but my name is Mary McCoy, and I am so in awe of everything you said. I wish you could just send us a transcript right now, but we will be putting your presentation up with all of your very wise words on our website for everybody to be able to hear again and quote. So thank you so much for joining us today. And your legacy is unbelievable, unbelievable legacy. I have so many questions for you. The Black Panthers, Emmett Till, I have so many questions, but I will not ask them now. Everybody is welcome to get in touch with Mr. Carter anytime, as he said, so that's a gift. But I would like to close by thanking our speakers for their provocative and enormously valuable presentations. And I'd like to thank all of you for attending and for your questions and the terrific suggestions you've shared. Most importantly, thank you for all your passion in teaching and your deep investment in your students, both clear from the very fact that you would spend a Friday of your summer engaging in the workshop presentations. A key takeaway I heard repeatedly was the importance of increasing student sense of agency and their belief in what I've heard called the possibility of possibilities, including the surprising possibilities inherent in just focusing on something local. We hope this workshop has given you ideas, activities, and materials for helping students foster this belief to defeat despair and instead feel empowered, resilient, and more connected to nature as they face the always uncertain future. Please watch your mailboxes, your postal mailboxes, and your inboxes for the gifts or swag we will be sending you, including your choices from the book order form. And please click on the link I've put in the chat to answer just a couple of questions we have for you and to learn how to order your complimentary books. Finally, presentation slides and videos, as I said, will be added to our website as we're able, so you will be able to access these resources online. In conclusion, I hope all of you have a fantastic weekend, and please reach out to us if you have any follow-up questions. Thank you.
Peace and love in the garden, everyone.
Peace and love in the garden, Fred.
Okay.
Thank